Hey, I'm Patrick. Today I'm going to show you how to install a good sub in your second generation Lexus IS and keep your Mark Levinson amplifier. Ready? Let's boogie. I love my ISF, I'll never sell it, but the Levinson sub, it's gotta go. Getting this car apart is easy, and I'll show you how. Installing the new sub would prove not so easy for me alone. I wanna keep it as stock as possible. I'll tell you a bit about the Skar. We're going to talk cars and audio with colorful language.
What's up, bitch? What do you want?
I'm going to enlist the help of a skilled carpenter. This is a story about automotive curveballs, tribulations, working hungover, and friendship. Times are in the description to easily isolate the how-to portions. Stay tuned if you'd like to see the entire saga about two friends with a mutual love for labor and accomplishment. We hope you dig it. Now, first things first, I've got nothing but respect for car audio enthusiasts. I consider myself an enthusiast with audio in the house. However, automotively, I've typically been a fan of the stock setups I've had in my cars. The original sub was replaced under warranty in 2017, my car's a 2008, and the latest one recently cooked a voice coil. At moderate to high volumes, the minute any low frequency would kick in, bzzzt, and the audio would pause. The stock subwoofer is horribly weak and it's time to do something about it, particularly now that it's broken again. Now, the Mark Levinson system is a very controversial system. Everybody's got an opinion on it, right? I find it has a lot to do with the production quality and the mix that you're actually listening to. For example, a lot of your vintage mixes, garagey stuff is not going to sound good, and a lot of your current mixes with a lot of compression, stuff like that, is not going to sound good either. So there has to be a middle ground, and there has to be a little bit of tweaking in the system to figure out exactly how to get it to sound good, at least in my opinion. In the meantime, let's get this back seat out. There's 1, 2, 3 hooks in here. What you have to do is you have to push and lift. Don't try and pull it out yet. But that's not to say all vintage and all current mixes don't sound good with the Mark Levinson. Read about dynamic range and the loudness war if you're not familiar. It's been claimed that the loudness war is over, but that doesn't mean that the mix you're listening to isn't incredibly over loud, particularly if it's a remaster of an older mix after, say, 2003. My recommendations: Steely Dan, the Citizen box set, anything by The Police, Boston's first album, Barry White, Typo Negative, Stone Temple Pilots' first album, anything from Rammstein except their 2019 release. The Mark Levinson system loves a really compressed kick. Rammstein will show you that. For hip-hop, anything LL Cool J, anything Eric B. and Rakim, anything Wu-Tang Clan, avoid most West Coast. I don't know any of the new stuff. Let's just take a minute and look at the quality of these welds. That's amazing. Tahara plant, baby. They know exactly what they're doing. Nice clean grounds. Fantastic. There's also the multi-channel aspect of the Mark Levinson system. I've never been a fan of multi-channel and car audio. I never really saw the point. First time I heard it was in 2001 C70, and I never understood why they did it. I didn't think it sounded good. However, that being said, if you're interested in good multi-channel, my picks are the Who, The Kids Are Alright 7.1 DVD, the 20mm and Saving Private Ryan at the last scene is always going to sound good. And if you haven't had your fill of Nirvana, their Unplugged in DTS album is fantastic. I don't know about you, but I'm in the habit of always breaking these blue pins that are back here. So keep an eye out because they're not anchored totally. They just slide in and out of their slots. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna pull this. Like that. And as you can see, the way that I did it, it kept all of the pieces in there, the actual plastic screws, and that way you don't break them, right? I'm constantly breaking the things. I'm having a little bit of trouble with this one, so I am gonna pull towards me and then pull out. And you can see Fell right out. But I heard it, and I got it. One stayed in. Make a note of it. You've got 4 clips. 1, 2, and then 2 back here that go under. I prefer to go in the front. Pops right out. Now, you've got 3 of those plastic screws. You got 1 here, 1 here, left of center, and then 1 here. Pop it up. 1, 2, 3. Don't pull this out yet. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the seat belt, both seat belts. And then what you got to worry about here is the brake light right underneath there. See, there's the sub. But first things first. Now here's how I do it to make sure I don't damage the brake light, right? Just give this a little pop, and then you'll see pull this plug, remove the brake light. Just remember that if your mix suffers, the Mark Levinson system will exploit it, and exploits other mixes too for unknown reasons. Some things just don't sound good in the Mark Levinson system. It's not a Bose system. I know Bose takes a lot of heat for changing the audio signal that you're listening to, but Bose's ability to strengthen a poor mix is much stronger than the Mark Levinson. Let's face it, when we're in our cars and we have a stock audio system, we want the audio to sound as good as possible. We're not necessarily concerned with 1000% accuracy here. We're in our car, we're driving somewhere, we're moving. We want it to sound good. Do your best to configure the EQ to suit your listening tastes. Otherwise, you'll be changing it every single time you change the band that you're listening to. Also, make sure you set a lot of that sound to the rear of the car as opposed to the front. As with many other multi-channel systems, everything seems to push to that center channel. Move the signal back. So let's unbox and take a quick look at the Skar. Remember, less ohms makes more powerful the sub. Because I'm keeping the stock amp, this sub is going to be perfect for my application. I'm going to be keeping it at 8 ohms, and I'm grateful the company took the time to fill this niche. Now, comparing this side by side with the stock Mark Levinson subwoofer, you can tell immediately everything you've heard is true. The stock sub is a piece of crap. For reference, you're going to see that the new sub sits a bit over 2 inches higher than the stock sub. This is going to create problems. I needed something that would fit in the old location. Preferably, the smaller, the better. The closer to the stock sub, the better. I'm going to get to that in a minute. So you're going to want to check the rating of your current sub just to be certain everything's in order. Set your multimeter to a mega. Touch the probes to their associated positive and negative terminals. 7.5. Part of me is extremely tempted to test 4 ohms, but I don't want to cook this Mark Levinson amplifier and be on the hook to buy a new one. So grab your wire strippers and some 16-gauge wire. Unfortunately, I only had green in my toolbox, so I'm just going to use that for positive and negative. So as opposed to parallel, this is going to be wired in series. And that is because I'm going for 8 ohms. Department of Redundancy Department. As you can see by the diagram, the wiring dictates the power that the sub is going to be putting out. Parallel for 2 ohms, series for 8. And then the other 2 wires will be wired to the amp. Now, there's a right and a wrong way to do this. What you see here is the wrong way. To quote Jeff, a good friend and the smartest mechanic I know, the majority of the time you're performing a repair, you're repairing the mistake of the last guy who was in there. So let's not be that guy. You've got to make these connections strong and protect them from the elements. So with a little help from Sherman McCoy, I set up an electrical film set behind the car. Some of you might be a little afraid of soldering. I understand that. I've done it 1,000 times and I'm still not great at it. It doesn't have to be pretty, just solid. We're going to test a new product here. I've never used self-solder heat shrink butt connectors before. We're going to try because they might help us in such an enclosed space, and we're going to try it 3 ways: soldering, a heat gun, and for the heck of it, a lighter. So strip a 1/2 inch off your wires, insert the sleeve, give the wires a quick wipe with some alcohol, fan out the copper wires a little bit, push them together, give them a little bit of a twist, not too much. As far as soldering, tin both your iron and the wires, and get the wires you're soldering together hot. At this point, touch the rosin cord to the joint. Forgive my shaky hands. I spend my days in constant concern that I'm going to pass away at any time. This isn't the type of heat shrink you'd necessarily want to do directly on a solder joint, since you'd be doubling up. But since I'm using a new product, I'll just toss it on. You get the point. If you can't pull your joint apart, you got it. The instructions for the butt connectors call for a reflector nozzle for using a heat gun. Well, I'm not a heat gun guy. I'm far too jaded to pull out my dumb phone and Google this, and I can't tell you I know any heat gun guys. But an educated guess tells me it's no different than furiously wrapping a 7/8 in electrical tape, holding it with a pair of pliers, and concentrating the heat directly on the solder sleeve. I gotta be honest with you, I'm really impressed how the heat gun technique came out. Killer. Awesome! I know some of you guys have been using lighters forever, so I thought we'd give it a test. In this case, the lighter didn't stiffen the wires, but it makes the joint a dirty one and seriously runs the risk of stiffening the wires. I would avoid a lighter. In the end, remember, if you choose to solder, use actual heat shrink and not one of these sleeves. However, I'm actually pleased with how these sleeves worked, particularly with the heat gun.
I think that's pretty badass.
As you can kind of see and kind of hear from this rough test, to the car audio enthusiast, this is a mild setup, but for me, it's perfect. It maintains the harmony of the existing Levinson system, allows me to keep the stock amp, and brings back that punch that I've been missing. I'm happy so far. Originally, when I set out to do this, I wanted to keep the sub in the exact location. I'm going to tell you why that's impossible, but also how easy it turned out to be to mitigate this problem. So I took the original subwoofer apart to isolate the top bracket. As you can see, the top bracket lines up perfectly with the sub. So then I wanted to make a template so I could line up all of the screw holes properly and then create some new ones. Then I Dremel out the center section of the top bracket. Then I Dremel out anything that needed Dremeled in the rear of the car within reason. But as you can see, the hole that contained the stock subwoofer is comprised of multiple layers of steel, and I was concerned about compromising the integrity of the structure. I've seen how other guys put aftermarket subs in the middle of the back seat. I want to keep it as stock as possible. Now, I thought this was going to be a problem because I'm lousy at carpentry, but thankfully I know the best guy in the business, and that's my buddy Roberto. We're going to go get him.
What's up, bitch? What do you want?
I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again. I'm extremely lucky to have multifaceted friends. So I took the back seat out, like I said. I wanted to put the sub where the old sub went, but like I showed you before, it doesn't fit.
Let me go around the other side.
Okay.
think the best way to do it is we're gonna take this apart, because you don't need this part right here.
There is an armrest that goes right here, but it would be kind of badass as if we have it open.
Then you can see the subwoofer there.
That's exactly right. There's
yeah, it's no fat kid or anybody's gonna come through here anyway. So,
right.
So we can take this apart.
Yeah.
We can definitely build an entire subwoofer box from here.
Okay.
Okay. So it's gonna be a lot better for the subwoofer, and it's gonna be badass.
Yeah. Have you ever done anything like this before?
No, but it's gonna work.
No, I believe you. I'm just curious if you've done it before.
No, but it's gonna work.
I live for breaking his balls like this. The man can do this job in his sleep. Check out this bathroom in my 140-year-old basement he built in just over a weekend. Or this secret room bookshelf he built for my office, a Christmas present from him and my girlfriend. In addition to that, we've got commonalities and a love for toys with horsepower and a preference for the company of animals over the company of mankind.
What's the matter with you? Who gives a shit if we did it before or not? It's gonna be badass.
Okay. Well, let's do it.
Okay.
All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these bolts out and I'm gonna tape off, well first I'm gonna put the back seat back on, and then I'm gonna tape out exactly where the subwoofer is gonna go, right? So you know the exact midpoint, right? And then I'll bring this over to your garage and get started on like a prototype or something. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that'll work.
Awesome. Now, automotive audio is not only an art, it's a true science to the most exacting and quite frankly interesting extent. It's both a left and right-brained operation. Aftermarket audio is free game. My advice, your box building specs belong coming directly from the manufacturer of the product that you're using. Pick up the phone if you have to. Talk to someone. I am opting for a sealed configuration as opposed to a ported one. I'm not doing Dynamat because I want to hear the stock ISF exhaust from inside the car as it is right now. Skar's recommended sealed volume in cubic feet is 0.35. So I built mine with a length of 8.5 inches, a width of 10.5, and a height of 7. This equals 0.3615 cubic feet. For the simplest of measurements in cutting the wood, I feel this is close enough. Don't forget about your cutout diameter of 7.3 inches.
What we're gonna do is use the exact descent mount on making sure that the subwoofer, when you're looking at it this way, it's gonna be almost flush here. We are gonna make it work, and I think we'll give you some measurements and all kinds of shit. Let's get to work.
Let's do it.
You know what? This one's really old gun. It's one of the oldest. I've been doing this shit for a long time, and I still love my old guns and tools. They're a little heavier. They don't look the best. They're not flashy, but they work. So if somebody at home or somebody wants to do it, they should be able to do it pretty much with a hammer and a nail.
Because I saw you had some Festool shit over there too.
Yeah, that's a company I think it's overpriced.
Interesting.
It's not. I think it's cool. People see it. If you're good at what you do, you don't need the best shit. So the tools doesn't do the job. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Now, originally my prototype had notches that would actually hug the sides of the door for a more secure fit. I want to note that these notches were a bad idea in addition to the measurements I took to achieve them. I did a piss poor job of measuring. That's not a bad job, that's a piss poor job.
Making me hard as sucked big time.
While standing in apathetic shame, I was brought comfort in the realization that I was not the only one foggy from the previous night's energy expenditure. After the 16th century Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés conquered what is now Mexico, he stood before his captured Aztec prisoners and said,
Sometimes shit happens, what can you do?
So as pretty as they were, unfortunately the notches had to go. With this and a new face, we were good.
You can draw the speaker outside and then leave like maybe that much, quarter of an inch or anything that you need.
Okay.
It doesn't really have to be perfection. Some guys get really crazy. They go with a router and stuff. I think a jigsaw is just fine. It's not perfect. It's going to be something that's going to be function. It's going to work and anybody else can do it. That's it. Once you put your armrest down, that's what it's gonna look like. That's it.
Well, we gotta straighten that shit out.
Well,
It's gotta say Skar. It's gotta be right side up. I mean.
well, you can kiss my ass with that shit. Once you fix it up, you can do that shit. Right now, we're gonna let the glue sit, and then tomorrow we'll finish it. And that's it. Just a couple hours worth of work, a couple beers. And you got yourself a good shit. You're not ruining the car. You're making the car just simple, but it's gonna work. So, told you.
Tomorrow is going to be like Christmas. I am enthusiastically ecstatic with the result. I just had to thank Roberto in the only way that I know how.
Just, you said you hadn't done it before, so I just wanted to make sure that you were confident.
It doesn't matter. It's gonna work. What's the matter with you, man?
You absolutely nailed it. I think that's totally killer. You tell me when to adjust once you put that speaker in.
Actually,
Roberto got a case of the f***its and made an executive decision to put a handful of screws directly into the Fat Kid escape door.
I want to keep it as stock as possible.
I'm gonna hold it in place, just give me a second, okay?
Yeah.
Hold it in place, he said. Roberto knows exactly how to handle me, i.e. don't ask, do. Thanks, Roberto.
With a little bit of patience and some asshole like my neighbor next door.
Hang on, let me get this wire through here. It's
Okay.
getting stuck.
Oh, we gotta put some music on.
After Roberto closed the back of the box, it was time to tidy up and reassemble the car to give you the money shot of the sub inside the car. You're never gonna believe what happened next. Catastrophe. Once I loaded up the back seat, there was a hard component obscured by cloth digging directly into the top of the sub. I wish I had a picture of it for you, but I had to immediately get the seat off the sub. It's a miracle I didn't tear it. Thank God I didn't. The foam ring was nearly smashed. I should have known that there'd be one more curveball. I am not in the habit of meddling with load-bearing structures, and here we have it, an iron bar. Some sick joke from the Tahara plant. My heart is broken. You make an oath to yourself, you try to stick to it.
Hey, Anything you want, man. That's it.
I think it's pretty badass.
Pretty simple, but yeah.
I think that's badass.
How am I supposed to do this without a torch?
Got yourself a subwoofer. That's cool shit.
Dude, you nailed it.
You're not ruining the car. You're making the car just simple, but you know it's gonna work.
I want to keep it stock as possible.
God, I love that sound. Liberating commitment.
If you're good at what you do, you don't need the best shit. So the tools doesn't do the job.
I'll deal with the rattle if it happens. There's no going back now.
So, I thought it would be useful to include some of the different troubleshooting steps and even ideas that didn't work throughout this video. I hope that it helps you choose a sub and install a sub that is compatible with your Mark Levinson amp, because the Mark Levinson subs are exorbitantly priced and they're notoriously unreliable. In any case, there's more videos like this to come, so you know what to do. If you'd really like to support this channel, and if you liked any of the music that played throughout this video, it's all by my band, Kill the Scene. There's a Bandcamp link down in the description. We'd love to hear from you. My best to you and to those who are important to you, and good luck.
What's up, bitch? Did it work?
It sure did, man. It looks fantastic. All right, cool. So let's take a look.